Ho, 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 and welcome back. I'm John Stark from MacTheMovieGuy.com, your favorite blind film critic. And today, it's it's a new holiday classic. It's last year I did a couple of these holiday classics segments for Christmas time. It's a new one. This one takes place at Christmas time. It's also the 80th anniversary of Meet Me in St. Louis, which I found with audio description. So it's an interesting musical I'd actually never seen before, and this is a musical that, uh, being gay that I am, I have lots of music theater friends, and they are always like, "How have you not?" Like a couple musicals. Sort of like when you're also a cinema nerd, there are always a couple movies that like you dare not say you'll know what they are. If you're just now getting into cinema, there are always a few films where people look at you and they go, "What? How have you never seen that movie?" Even if you're blind, there'll still be people who are like, "What? Who are you? Get out of here!" I feel like I've definitely been in a place before where people are like, "Oh, I love Meet Me in St. Louis," and I haven't been able to join in, and then they spot me and they're like, "Why aren't you talking?" And I'm like, "I've never seen it. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." Then I have to reapply for my gay card and get it back. And it stars Judy Garland, which is, I admit, should have paid more attention to. I'm very sorry. This is my attrition. This is Judy Garland. She's being directed by her future baby daddy. This is how Liza Minnelli came to be. Liza Minnelli came to be is through Meet Me in St. Louis. It's directed by Liza's father, Victor Minnelli, and of course, mother Judy Garland. And even though I guess the story was always that he was a bit of a queen, he was always in love with Judy Garland, just the one woman, the, the exception to the rule, if you will. Um, so, and she's heavily featured here as well. This film was nominated for a couple Academy Awards, including for the trolley song, "Bang, bang, bang with the trolley." That song is in here. It has also some just sort of like regular cuts, like "Skip to My Lou" is in here. Just cause. Um, and it has a beautiful rendition of Judy Garland singing "Have Yourself a Merry Little Christmas." Just gorgeous. Just a gorgeous rendition of Judy Garland singing that. So it does take place kind of around Christmas time. Also, interestingly, around like Halloween too. So like this film just sort of, it's a year in the life, but it kind of like closes on Christmas Eve because that's sort of like at the end of Christmas. Is the end of the year, so it sort of closes on Christmas. But it's like four sisters, mom, dad. It takes place like at the turn of the century, like 1900 something. And it's funny to see like the 1940s people make fun of the 1900s people, because it kind of feels like that they're looking at some of this with like, that's outdated. We don't do that anymore in the 1940s. And now we're in like 2024 and we're like, oh my God. Because it's like twice the amount of difference between, now this is an 80-year difference instead of a 40-year difference. So we look back at this and like, so there are some really funny lines here because they're kind of just out of date time-wise. I love when Judy Garland's just on the bed and she's crying and she's like, "I just want to die." And they're like, "Why?" "Because I don't have anybody to go to the dance with me." And I'm like, oh my God. People were very dramatic back then. There's a guy who has a line that's like, "Remind me, small child, to smack you later," or something like that. I don't. There's some really like over the top sort of like of the period lines that made me giggle. I was like, "That's dumb." I love that. But I mean, the music here is solid, and Judy's fantastic. There's some stuff that's relatable here. I think this would be a great sort of like co-watch with Little Women, you know? Like if you were to watch, because that's also oddly Christmas themed. You know, I mean, there's a part of that takes place at Christmas time. It's about four sisters, and it's about sort of more than a year in their life, but it's about their life. So since this is about four sisters as well, and sort of their story, I think if you're gonna like double feature anything, I would double feature one of the Little Women and Meet Me in St. Louis. So it's very just different plots. Each girl sort of has like a different thing. The little girl here, what, Margaret O'Brien? Did I get that right? Honestly, going into this, the only name I recognized was Judy Garland. I'm so sorry. With older talent, I don't the names don't immediately pop with me. She obviously popped. Big, yeah. But the littlest girl here, she ended up getting like a Juvenile Academy Award. Man, she can cry. Man, definitely. But there's this cakewalk scene, which I would probably highlight as being the most uncomfortable thing that I sat through during this film was, oh, in the 40s, we still didn't know what that was, or we did know what it was, and we were ignoring it anyway. Well, then and then I was thinking, but the 40s, actually, this is the 1900s, so are they trying to say something about the 1900s? It's really hard to tell in those pieces when you have something. Uh, it's like, are they trying to say the 1900s? Were they aware? Like, we shouldn't be doing cakewalks anymore? Like, is that a thing? There was, and I went down like several rabbit holes in terms of time periods. There's the grandfather here who tries to make Judy feel better about her life. At one point in the film, he starts talking about like your grandmother and I used to go out and dance, and I was like, when? Not that I don't think people have gone out and danced, but I was like, before the Civil War or during the Civil War? Like, when was this for you, sir? Um, so things that a cheery musical doesn't necessarily want to dive into is the fact that it's very likely that grandfather fought in the Civil War based on age, time period of this, he, when he likely would have been of fighting age. Quite likely fought. Anyway, and his courtship might have been around that same time period. They don't really mention it, but uh, things you can't not think about when you have characters in a film that takes place right around like 1900. So some stuff is really funny. Like they make fun of the ketchup a little bit here. There's some references to the ketchup because uh, it didn't always come in bottles like we get it today in the same sort of like it used to be kind of more runnier and homemade, and we didn't have, you know what I'm saying, like the 1900s. So this is like 1900s ketchup, so it looks kind of soupy. And maybe like today, if we presented ketchup that way, I'm sure people would be like, "What is that? Is that tomato soup? I'm not eating that." Um, so yeah, it's. I'm sure the costuming here is fabulous. Not so much of it was captured in the audio description, but a little bit. Um, Mostly I was able to follow it through the thing. Plus, musicals are great because you can just stop and listen to the beauty of the music being sung, and especially when you have just a gorgeous voice like Judy Garland, just one of like the all-time greats. Um, Singing, it's really just it ties everything in, and you're able to just sit back and go, "Fuck, that's great." Like that is a great voice, subjectively, objectively, however you want to look at it. She was a great singer, and she sounds great, and she still sounds great. 80 years later, her voice just sounds. I mean, it's got that sort of like old timey vibe because we didn't. I guess film preservation stuff like that is not necessarily a high priority, but um, it's funny that even through that, even when you hear a film that has those sort of like crackles and pops in it, in the film score a little bit, she still sounds incredible. And it's just like she's defying all odds. The film is degrading, but her voice is not. It's amazing. So I really love that. I don't know that I'm a huge fan of Maybe in St. Louis in terms of a musical. Um, it's all leading up to a dance. It does feel very old timey, and it's not that I don't like older musicals. I do. A lot of Rodgers and Hammerstein stuff, but um, this film for me just doesn't have like hit after hit. It has like maybe two or three songs, and some of those are ones that are not unique to the musical. You know what I'm saying? Like Have Yourself a Merry Little Christmas, not necessarily, I mean, the trolley song is what was nominated for the Oscar here. So, um, when you put that against other musicals that were released, especially like Rodgers and Hammerstein musicals, there are some musicals where it's like banger after banger after banger song, like songs that people get around and they debate. And they're like, well, what's your favorite song from this musical? And it just feels like an endless debate where you can just go around and never come to like a final conclusion on some musicals as to which song you love the most. Like you could get into the Music Man, and you're always going to have that person who saw Family Guy and just is going to push Shapoopy. They're going to be like, Shapoopy is my favorite song. You're like, stop. Stop. Go sit down. but with this, yeah, I think there's maybe like two or three contenders, and then you could easily just like whittle it down to be like, which one is Judy singing? Oh, the trolley song. Okay, so the trolley song is the winner. Um, and I like my musicals that have just more hits in them than this. So I don't know if it's my new Christmas classic, but I know that this is a holiday classic for others, especially for people who love Judy Garland. And that's why I wanted to touch on it. So I thought this would be an interesting inclusion. I wanted to open up my horizons. Like I did last year with Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, just sort of picking a new holiday classic and tackling it and seeing what it's like. So not my favorite musical, but I'm glad I saw it finally. I'm glad I finally got off my ass after 80 years of this thing existing and saw Meet Me in St. Louis. And now finally when I'm in that awkward conversation, everybody's like, oh my God, Meet Me in St. Louis. I can be like, yes, I have thoughts now. I've developed some thoughts on Meet Me in St. Louis. Not strong ones, but some. And I can participate. And now you can participate too. Or you can't, or maybe not. I don't know. This is not that in depth. This is why we have podcasts, is so that like two people can sit down for 5 hours and talk about Meet Me in St. Louis in detail and be like, well, that was that one scene where they had the drapery behind them. And that's not exactly the kind of drapery you would have seen in the 1900s, but in the 1940s. So really it's kind of out of place and time-wise. Like, you're just like, Jesus. So, I'm going to give Meet Me in St. Louis a B. Yeah, it's a good musical, not my favorite musical. It's a decent Christmas film, not an obvious choice for me. I had some fun, not my favorite Judy Garland movie because fuck, The Wizard of Oz is always going to be there. But among others, I'm sure people are like, but A Star is Born. I'm like, okay, well that's fine. I mean, you do you. I like Wizard of Oz. I think it's really hard to ever top Dorothy. But fine. Some people may not like Wizard of Oz, but I don't think this is the immediate number 2 that just slides in right below it. So B feels like a good grade. Anyway, thanks for watching. Thanks for subscribing, and I will see you guys on the other side of Christmas.